Hey everybody, it's Mick the Professional here. Normally you're going to see me on Multiverse Comics Showcase, but we decided to do a new cast starting today. Multiverse Comics presents. And we're going to do a little different stuff with this one. What I want to do with this show is ask some questions and focus more on why we love comics. Why do people get into comics? Why do people choose the characters that they choose? And what effect does that have on everyday life? And how does that actually relate to every individual in their everyday life? And why is it so ingrained in society today compared to 10 years ago or 80 years ago, and get an idea of where we've been and where we might be going with this one. A few years ago, we started a podcast that was a lot of fun. We call Path of the Hero. And I think that idea just didn't take off for us based on some time constraints and things that we had. And what I want to do with this iteration of the show is going to be very, very similar to what we were doing there before. So if you listen to that one, you're going to kind of be ahead of the curve, I think, when it comes to what's going on here. So just to give you guys a background a little bit, I've been into the comic book world since I was about 4 years old. First comic book was given to me by my grandparents, basically to keep me quiet in church. If you come into the store, you'll actually be able to see that comic hanging on my wall. It's one of my prized possessions. It was the comic that really started it all. But even at that young of age, I was into the Super Friends as they were on TV, the Challenge of the Super Friends, and any of the other, Superman-related shows, which, turned into other things like, He-Man genre. The Ninja Turtles were popular in the 90s. Of course, every kid in the world loved those. The Transformers and the G.I. Joe age hit just slightly before I was interested in it, so I didn't get into the Gen 1 Transformers as much as a lot of kids from the 80s. I did enjoy the G.I. Joe quite a bit. Still like to go back and watch some of those episodes. They were fun. Their PSAs are hilarious. But beyond that, the X-Men in the 90s really grabbed me as far as the cartoon world is concerned. And that one, it was well done. The Spider-Man show came out shortly after the X-Men hit. I was okay with Spider-Man. I've never been a huge Spider-Man guy. I appreciate Spider-Man, but I'm not what I would call a fanboy on the Spider-Man front by any means. But Batman the Animated Series hit, and that opened up all kinds of new worlds, I think, for comic book fans. It was the best interpretation, I think, of Batman that we'd ever seen on a screen, aside from maybe the Tim Burton Batman movies, which weren't perfect, but Batman the Animated Series, I feel like Bruce Timm really nailed it. He really understood the character. And he cared about the character's origins and where it came from. And Batman is one of those characters that I think that if you look at who the character is, and I'm not just saying the Bruce Wayne detective kind of deal, but if you go back and you look at where that character started, how he was just a detective. Yeah, he had a couple of guns in his pocket, but I mean, to be fair, he was kind of a non-superpowered version of the Shadow when he came out. But Batman, I don't really feel found his footing as far as what they wanted him to be as a comic book character until pretty much the Neil Adams era of artwork. So when you get somebody like Neil Adams and say even like Denny O'Neil writing that story, you start to get what everybody I think knows as Batman today. You know, we've had a few more changes here and there, and they've tried to darken him up a little bit. And even though the Batman is called the Dark Knight, I really don't think that the Batman needs to be any darker than what he is today. If you go back and look at the Bruce Timm stuff, I really think that that's the palette that you should start with, and then formulate your stories from there. And I might be talking a little too much about Batman today just because last night I watched the Batman Hush film. The Hush story arc was one of the best Batman reads that I think I've ever had, issue by issue. The Death of Bruce Wayne was really good. The R.I.P. Batman story was good. But Hush was an exciting book. They were doing some things that we'd never seen done in a Batman story before. And the movie just didn't quite capture the same feel as the comic. The movie kind of jumps shark a little bit for me pretty early on. When Bruce goes to hunt down Ivy in Metropolis, and he automatically expects Superman to get in the way, so he takes basically kryptonite brass knuckles with spikes on the end of them with him, which never happened in the comic. When Superman showed up in that book, it was completely unexpected and out of nowhere. And that was one of the exciting parts about it. He just happened to have the kryptonite ring in his belt, and he punches Superman in the jaw hard enough that Batman breaks his hand, and Superman kind of barely feels it. That's not how the movie went, and I think they dropped the ball on that part. And, they also focused a little too much on the Batman-Catwoman relationship for me in this part, but I think that was influenced more by the recent events of the King run with the wedding and all that, as they're trying to build, I think, up to that type of a point in the cinematic universe for the Batman movies. But Batman's a character that you have to, you can walk that line of, is he going to go over it and is he going to kill somebody? Ultimately, no, he can't. And he shouldn't. So, when you have guys like Zack Snyder saying things, like, well, my Batman, kills people. Well, he doesn't understand Batman, if that's the case. Because Batman wouldn't do that. He's not going to use a gun and mow down 50 people. He's not going to ramp his car into a back of a trailer with a bunch of henchmen in the back of it just to run them over and murder them while the crunched up in the metal under the tires. It's just not going to happen. In fact, there's actually one sequence in that Hush film that was really, really effective. That Batman and Catwoman are dealing with the Superman issue at the time, and Catwoman pushes Lois off of a ledge. Batman kind of backs her up when he's talking to Clark about it, but after they're gone, he looks at Catwoman and he says, I didn't tell you to throw her off the ledge, that was going too far. And she said, well, I made a judgment call. That's Batman having the restraint. He didn't want to hurt Lois. He didn't want to possibly murder Lois. He's okay with the ruse, but actually putting her in danger would be a problem. We're also seeing some of the the shadiness of some of the hero side show up in the Outsiders cartoon. I get that they have some side plans sometimes that they don't cue everybody into. But I don't feel that members of the Justice League would condone pulling the wool over the public's eyes on basically setting up fake heroic incidences to make the Outsiders look good. So I have to agree with Black Lightning on everything that they said in that instance of the show, where he felt betrayed and deceived, and rightfully so. As you're watching the Outsiders show, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, go check it out. It's a pretty good ride. All seasons of the Young Justice so far have been pretty good. I've had a few complaints about the last few episodes, but minor complaints compared to what we generally get out of Marvel these days. But I digress a little bit. So more along the background here. So aside from when I got into these shows, when the Death of Superman books came out, is really when I got heavily involved into the comics. And from there, it's been a nonstop collection. I would always pick up the new books as they come out. If I could get something old to add to the collection, I would. My collection covers mostly DC properties, but a wide variety of books. So much so that we ended up opening a store. I'd had a job for about 10 years or so, and they decided to shut the facility down that I worked for. So about, a month or so, about 3 months before the shop opened is when we decided to make the decision of opening up the store. And I'd say it was probably the best decision that we made. I feel like the one thing I know in life is all revolving around comics and being able to help people into this hobby and find the stuff that they like that are going to be a part of their collection. It's a lot of fun, and comics mean more to people than just stories on paper. And it's not necessarily a nostalgia thing. It is for some people, but I feel like most of the comic book readers have a much deeper connection with the characters and the stories that they're reading. And this is probably why a lot of people feel like comic book nerds complain and argue more than any other nerd genre out there. They see where the characters have been, they see where they're going, they know what that interpretation should be, and then when a writer comes along and they don't exactly honor the spirit of that character, that's where the arguments start. And there's a lot of guys that feel that the industry is not listening to them, that they've decided to push social and political agendas before stories. If you look at all of these guys who keep talking about diversity in comics, I would argue that the comic book world has been the most diverse since its iteration. Okay? You got two guys from Cleveland who are Jewish that created the most iconic superhero of all time, who was in fact an alien immigrant. It's been brought up multiple times about racism with Superman, and the thing is, he's not even from Earth. The fact that he looks like a white guy is really coincidental, based on the evolutionary track of his planet, and how those people adapted to live in that world. But if you look at other heroes, DC also had the first female superhero, which was not Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was early on, and she may be hailed as the biggest female superhero. But Hawk Girl appeared a year well in advance, prior to Wonder Woman. So, in the first few years of DC, we've got already a huge base in different types of heroes. Marvel came along with Black Panther pretty early on. Arguably the most notable black superhero. We also had, even in the Super Friends, there was Black Vulcan, who was a guy that used lightning powers. Well, later on, DC ended up with another version of that character. They ended up calling Black Lightning, who even has a TV show today. And it's good. Always been a Black Lightning fan. Luke Cage is one of the coolest comic books ever written. Not to mention all the other, Shang-Chi's and the Kung Fu guys. And so, if you look at comics all over, comics have always represented every background, every race, both men and women. And very, very little prior to the last few years were the stories ever focused on anything outside of superhero acts. We did have, some more on drugs books and that sort of thing, which is good. But we weren't ever pushing any sort of any sort of political, anything anti-anybody stuff in any of our books. And if you go back to the early days of the X-Men were all about people who were different. People that didn't look normal, people that didn't do things the way that we did them. They had these powers and they were persecuted. There was a lot of, references to Holocaust survivors. I mean, Magneto himself was in a concentration camp for a while. And, then the X-Men also had the first gay marriage in a comic book with North Star. I mean, this is stuff that has naturally fallen into place with these comics that were, again, way ahead of the curve as far as people being accepted for being different or making sure that a certain type of individual was represented somewhere. And I think that's the appeal to comics. And I think this is why comic book collectors are the largest group of accepting and just flat out great people. You spend the vast majority of your free time in your life reading comic books, and you're reading about all these heroes that do heroic things and stopping bank robberies and that sort of thing. And I would argue the case that, and maybe it's just me being naive because I've read comic books for so long, but I would argue the case that if you give it a crowd of individuals and split them up based on hobbies, the guys that read comic books are more likely to be law-abiding citizens than the guys that don't read comic books. I might be wrong. I might get some hate mail on that one. That's fine. But I'm interested to know what you guys think about it, especially for any sort of topics that you guys want to talk about in the future, or even if you want to be in the show. Drop us a line and let us know. But I would argue that comic book people have a better sense of morality than most in society today. I don't think on that for a minute. So anyway, we've been here at the store 2 years. We've grown a lot. Our customer base increases every day. We're still seeing brand new faces in. We do what we can to make everybody happy. Of course, we're not going to make everybody happy all the time. But that's what this whole experience is about, right? Comics are, if they're your thing, then I would argue that a comic book store owned by someone who loves them as much, if not more so than you do, is probably the place that you want to go hang out. So if you're ever in the area and you want to pop on in, come on by. We are here noon to 8 every day of the week, except Sundays, which is 1 to 6. And we've got plenty of seating available to just kick back, relax, read a book, talk about a book, let you rant and talk about your favorite characters. And that's kind of the purpose of the store, really. I mean, having a place for you to pick up what it is that you're looking for. And that social interaction that sometimes is harder to find at other locations. I know that some of us out there, as far as in the comic book world, are generally seen as somewhat socially awkward in times. And you know what? That's okay. D&D guys, Magic players, nerds of all kinds. We like having you in the store. We like talking to you. We learn a lot. And having that safe haven for everybody, which I sometimes refer to as it's like the Cheers for nerds. That's what we're aiming for. So, like I said, if you have a store in your local area that's like that, fantastic. If you don't have a store like that and you're looking for one, check them all out. Find the one that's going to work for you. Go to the guys who know what they're talking about behind the counter. Ask questions. And if they're not cool with it, or they're there to make a buck, that's fine. But I have a feeling that you all have a better experience with people who are knowledgeable of the content and love the stuff, and will find that overall, as a group, we get better when we interact. So I think next episode of this show, will be less of me ranting and or raving about things, and more talking to some other people coming in about their views on comics and comic characters and changes that we've gone through over the years, and have some discussion on why it's okay for some characters to change and why it's not okay for some characters to change. Some of the guys that we're going to bring in are not comic book people, but we're still going to discuss it, and their point of views I think are going to be interesting for you guys to hear. Some of them are gamers, say like solely D&D guys, but we've got at least one or two of those guys that are willing to come in and talk about their thoughts on comics interpretation of characters and how those things are going, just even in the cinematic worlds versus what we see on paper. So anything from the major collector to the casual collector to people who don't collect at all. I think what we're going to find out is that we're all really a lot closer on the same pages on a lot of this stuff than what we thought in the past. And I think part of the strategy that we're looking to do is hope that some of these guys from the industry, artists, writers, publishers, editors, may listen a little bit and get back to looking at the stories and not worried about trying to make a buck as much as preserving the legacies of these characters and what they stand for going forward, to make sure that they're going to be there in whatever platform comes along next. Let's face the simple fact here. The comic book world is not likely to last forever. We are, I'm going to call it a Kryptonian state right now. Everything is unstable. There's tremors. With the major corporations having their hands in the pots like AT&T and Disney. Who knows where things will go? We could be perfectly okay, or everything could explode and all of these characters and everything will only be able to be found in video games and movies and TV shows. And the comic book world may fall apart and all we have are the old issues. It's possible. IDW may take over Marvel. That's my theory. Maybe not. AT&T may or may not keep DC Comics. I don't know. Maybe they'll keep the character rights and get rid of the comic side. That's a possibility and a problem that we could face in the future. I hope not. That's not a world that I want to be a part of, but we'll see. But let me know what you guys think. Like I said, I've kind of chewed your ear for almost half an hour. Hopefully you've gotten some enjoyment out of listening to me today. If you have questions, comments, please let me know. Facebook is at MVS Comics. Check us out there on the Facebook, Multiverse Comics LLC, Parkersburg, West Virginia. And I guess we will see you guys next time. Also, drop us an email if you'd like. Mick at multiversecomics.biz. The website is also multiversecomics.biz. There'll be some updates and things coming with that here pretty shortly too, as we roll out our phase 2 plans. Thanks for listening to the first show here, and it'll probably be a few days before you hear another one out of the Multiverse Comics Presents. But we've got some exciting things planned, and hopefully you tune in next time. As we say in the showcase, we'll just back and forth that one.